Good morning. I'm Denise Jarvie, and I'm very excited to be here today to talk to you about providing warfighters with capability faster. My case study is all about adopting Agile in the Department of Defense. So when I was working with a particular defense contractor, I recognized that they needed to develop innovative products faster. I've been in the Department of Defense industry for about 15 years. And I've learned a lot with my experience with these defense contractors. I've noticed that they're often blocked by traditional project management, very heavy regulation, and a lot of reporting requirements. So in this case study, the Department of Defense customer needed the contractor to expedite development of a specific weapon system. But again, they were blocked by many of these regulations and compliance concerns. So the contractor I was working with had a very detailed system description, a lot of procedures and processes that they had to follow. And they also received a lot of very waterfall documents from their customer. So they received a work breakdown structure that was laid out in a very waterfall way, and they had to adhere to traditional milestones and technical reviews such as preliminary design review, intermediate baseline reviews, other test readiness reviews, and it was laid out in such a way that it was very sequential and very waterfall, and it made it very difficult for the contractor to execute the work. The stakeholders were not very comfortable with Agile. The government customer didn't understand Agile and Scrum, and that further hindered the contractor's ability to become Agile. When I arrived on site at this government contractor facility, they were not producing incremental working product on a regular basis. So to me, that was a red flag. And as I started to dive deeper and start to understand what was causing this problem, I recognized that the way that they had architected their product architecture was very waterfall. It was very sequential in nature, and it was a customer-driven architecture. So the contractors struggled with how to deal with this problem. They also had architected their slices of work in a very discipline-driven way, and they had a lot of really low-level plans and procedures about how they were going to do the work. Also, the testing was not done until very late in the product life cycle. So what we did is I helped the organization to develop a more healthy product architecture. I worked with them to map their scope of work in a vertical way and map it to the contractual statement of work, so they're able to accomplish work in a more agile way, yet still maintain compliance to their contract. We worked with them to develop more cross-functional teams, so there were less handoffs, and that aided them in becoming more agile, and it helped them to actually be able to demonstrate working product at the end of each sprint. We also started working with the team to ensure that test was included through each of these vertical slices of work, and we incorporated test-driven development. So the customer on this project did not have any formal Scrum training. They didn't understand their role in influencing Agile. They had a lot of contract language, which actually hindered the contractor's ability to become Agile, and they didn't even realize that they were influencing, bad behaviors. So the customer initially was not frequently involved. And actually, the contractor really didn't know that they should encourage customer involvement at that time. There was a lack of participation from the customer in really important events such as product road mapping, developing the product backlog, as well as incremental reviews and technical reviews throughout the development phases. So what I did is I encouraged the client to work with their customer much more and to elicit their feedback and to develop communication, language that they could talk to the customer, they could engage the customer from the beginning about their agile approach. Once we had this common language, we also developed a cadence in which the customer was regularly involved in discussion with the contractor, and that helped a lot. So once we were speaking the same language, we knew when to expect involvement with the customer. Things really started to improve through additional or more customer involvement. I helped the defense contractor rewrite their system description. As I mentioned, they had a heavy process, a very lengthy and detailed system description that actually did not allow them to be agile because they had to follow their process in order to be compliant. So since we involved the customer early, we worked with them to make sure that they understand what this new agile process would be. We were able to move more towards agility, yet still maintain this compliance. So we worked through mapping the roadmap, developing the release plans and the backlog to the contractual work breakdown structure and statement of work that the contractor was still required to have. This it allowed us to have a much more iterative development process, and we were able to involve the customer in something that we called release backlog reviews. So every release, we would involve the customer. We would go through what is coming up as far as what scope are we going to be completing in the next release, and the communication plan was much better. And this also added a lot of flexibility, and we also made our plans at a much higher level, and the customer felt comfortable with that because they were involved in the release backlog review, so it was not a surprise. Are there any questions?
So Denise, I happen to know that you're an industry leader in the fact that you're working with groups such as the NDIA and GAO to influence some of the Department of Defense approaches to trying to be more agile. Can you kind of give us a little bit more information about what types of things are changing?
Sure, that's true. So yes, thank you. I am involved in some of the agile working groups to try to develop processes and procedures that the government clients can support and allows the contractors to be more agile. So some of the things are, I mentioned in my talk, such as raising the detail level plans to a higher level and allowing the Scrum teams to still maintain the 3-5-3, the events, the artifacts, and the rules, so the teams feel like they can still do good Scrum, but yet maintain compliance with government regulation.
Can you expand on the customer role in influencing Agile?
Absolutely. This is huge I'm sure in all sectors, but especially in my experience with the government. If the customer is writing in language that is very waterfall, it is very difficult for the contractor to actually architect work in a way that is agile. If the government customer requires that all of the requirements and the design be done up front, and then they have to hold a review with the contractor before they're allowed to proceed into development, that is not agile. So just even the contract language is I would say the most important thing. All right.